What's good, my friends? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 o'clock p.m. today. Always do appreciate you making us part of your day each and every day. Here's how you can take part in the show. You can give us a ring at 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-326-3663. And the text line is there for you at 71307. Just start your text with the word fan, and away you go on the show. Great to be back. Great to be here with you guys. How was your last 10 or 11 days? Good to see you. I had a family matter to tend to over the last week, but great to be back. Great to be back, my friends. Remember, tomorrow we're going to be live on location at Ingles Markets in Boiling Springs, 8650 Asheville Highway in Boiling Springs. Full live show, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. at your local Ingles Markets. We cannot wait to see you out there. Coming up on the show today, sports ascending and descending, quarterback busts and hits for 2024. Has she, by herself, brought women's sports to the mainstream? What would the score be if these two teams played? You're going to be surprised at the matchup I drop on you. Plus, an interview with NBA Hall of Famer Rick Barry. Mark and Diesel's top 5 today brings you the top 5 ways the sports scene in the upstate could improve. And we have you here on the most interactive sports radio show anywhere. Diesel, let's open with what you shared with me in the last hour. This is major news here. And oftentimes what happens in life and in sports, when you've got, like Furman has somebody, right? Furman's got somebody that they do not want to lose. And then you have Bob Ritchie on this show. Bob Ritchie, Furman head men's basketball coach. Furman basketball playing a tick better of late. Is there a late season run in them? And when Bob Ritchie comes on this show, he says, what do you need, Bob? What do you need? What does the program need? He says, we need to upgrade Timmons Arena. That's just got to happen. All right. So what did we see last year? The last year, in my opinion, if you're a Furman fan, you can tell me if I'm wrong, has been all-time the best year for Furman athletics that we have seen anytime, anywhere, anyhow. You were the Cinderella of March Madness. You upset Virginia. You went to the Final 8 of the FCS playoffs. You obviously want this momentum to continue. You're coming off last week a win over VMI, a beatdown of Chattanooga, a win over ETSU. You've won 3 straight games in the SoCon Conference. And oh, by the way, this week you take on the first place team in your league, Samford. At Samford on the road is the current form going to get you there. But in order to maintain what Bob Ritchie has built, right? This is rapidly becoming the house that Bob Ritchie built, Timmons Arena. You got to kind of give him what he wants. And when Bob Ritchie was asked, okay, what do you need? What does the program need? He says all the things that you hear Clay Hendricks say. He says, look, we're never going to have the talent of some of these other schools because they take everybody, and we got to make sure that academically these athletes are Furman people, that they've got their ducks in a row, that academics are important to them. A certain profile of athlete is what we recruit here at Furman. Like, I get all that. I understand all that. The teams that we respect the most in college athletics are those who get the most out of the least. And Furman has consistently done that. Clay Hendricks has done it. Bob Ritchie has done it. This year, and you heard us talk about this the last week we were on, the week before last, has been up until this point a disappointment for Furman. They're 9-5 in the SoCon Conference. That's not terrible. But they are 6-7 in the non-conference, which is pretty bad. You need some goodwill. You need some good momentum. Next week is March. Can you believe that? Next week is March. Next Friday is March 1st. So what do? Here is the news. $40 million in renovations are planned for Timmons Arena. Diesel, what do you think of Timmons Arena? When's the last time you were at Timmons Arena? Was it when App State played there?
Yeah, we went to the App State game 2 years ago. No, it was last year. I think it was last year. It's an okay arena. It's not purpose-built for basketball. It is meant to be a multi-use facility, and anytime you have a multi-use facility, you always have compromises in the shape of the building. Like, it is not designed for you to be able to come into the building from multiple corners. Everybody's got to come in one way, and you can tell obviously that one side of the stands is built as nice permanent seating. The other side is a stage that they can bring seating in and out from. I mean, you can just tell. You can just tell when you walk in, even if you've never been in there, you can just tell that this is not a purpose-built basketball arena. And it's not.
I think that's a good way to say it. You walk in there and it doesn't hit you with the quaint, close to the court feel that some of the best group of 5 basketball arenas give you. Okay. No one's asking for you to build Rupp Arena here. Okay. No one's asking you to have more than 4,000 seats here. No one's asking that. But, when Bob Ritchie says we need upgrades to Timmons Arena, and then I'm going back to sitting in there myself, and what do I think? And, this is not meant as criticism to anybody. It is not an elite basketball venue. It is very clearly a multi-purpose venue. And the question is it time for Furman to have its own basketball-only venue? And are these $40 million in renovations going a long way to establish that? I'm fascinated to see what these renovations bring to the fold. But guys, realize, you've heard Diesel and I argue this on these airwaves for the last couple of years, that Furman has really staked a claim to being the best program basketball-wise in the state. Okay? And don't laugh, but if Clay Hendricks keeps doing what he's doing and Dabo Swinney keeps doing what he's not doing, okay, you don't want to know where that conversation could go. Is it time for Furman to move up to the FBS? Could an FBS Furman pull an upset over one of the big guys in this state, Clemson or South Carolina? The basketball program has already been there. Last year, no Clemson, no South Carolina in the tournament, Furman in the Final 32. Okay? You say to me, Mark, who's got the best basketball program in the state? I'm telling you, okay, I'm evaluating more than just this year. The answer is Furman. Okay? Now, this year, South Carolina has been better than Furman. This year, Clemson has been better than Furman. But the question is, who has the best program in the state? Well, the best program belongs to Bob Ritchie and the job that he has done. Okay? There's no doubt about it. That is the best program overall in the state. So, guys, are you cool with $40 million in renovations to Timmons Arena? And if it were your money, where would you spend it? Where would you drop it?
So here is where the money is being spent. This is saying here that this is the largest donor-funded project in the history of Furman University. Phase 2, which I assume they've already done phase 1 because the article starts with phase 2, is expected to begin in April and conclude by fall of 2025. These renovations will include a reimagining of the arena's entrance and lobby, upgrades to seating options, including the addition of premium and luxury box seating, improved audio and visual components, enhanced box office support, a children's play area, new visiting team, locker rooms, and new administrative offices.
There you go. There you go. So we will see, my friends, what happens here.
And we've seen the photo here. This is not a new photo. This is something that's been around for a little while. And I'm going to show it here. I'm going to do my best to kind of point it at the camera for those watching on the stream so you can see what it is Furman intends this arena
Diesel.
To be.
That's better. That feels more like a basketball arena, doesn't it? I mean, Diesel, quite honestly, right? It's a hard sell for Bob Ritchie. Let's say that he's recruiting a guy that Wofford is recruiting.
Sure.
And then Wofford says, hey, let's take you inside Jerry Richardson indoor
luck.
facility. And Bob Ritchie says, yeah, but I got the wins. And they're like, but we got the bling. And, look, guys, that's a standalone, gorgeous facility funded by a billionaire that is one of the nicest facilities in America. And quite simply, Furman has not had that. Okay? This upgrade maybe doesn't make you Jerry Richardson indoor facility wise, but it brings you a hell of a lot closer. It doesn't make you feel like, Diesel, I always had a problem. I'm like, okay, how is Duke ever going to be good at football? All those years when you saw that track going around the football stadium. And it's just like, they clearly didn't even prioritize football enough to give them a standalone field. This is where they do track. This is where they do everything. Recruits see that. The old song from Cheers is, I want to go where everybody knows your name.
How many times a year do you think opponents, recruiting-wise, who are recruiting against Duke, use an old photo? Wallace Wade doesn't have the track in it anymore, but they'll use that old photo against Duke. Like they'll show a recruit that's like, we see that you got an offer from Duke. You don't really want to go to Duke. Look at their stadium. They got a track.
Yeah. And Wofford using that against Furman.
Of course they do.
Hey, look, you want to play here? You want to play there? Where they do all sorts of different events and things. Well, guess what? Furman is erasing that advantage. Furman is saying, okay, you still got a great place. It's beautiful. Jerry Richardson indoor facility. Congratulations. You have a billionaire as an alum. You developed a good relationship with him. Good on you. Okay. However, Diesel, it is kind of amazing. While we're here, isn't it amazing that Wofford isn't better with that facility? You remember when Vince Vaughn was talking to that guy in the movie Swingers, and he's trying to pump him up, and he's like, with these fangs, you don't know how to kill the bunny.
You don't even know how money you are.
Yeah, man. Come on. With this, you don't know how to kill the bunny. With that arena, you don't know how to win. What do we need to give you to get some wins? You've got, show me a nicer small school arena in the nation than what Wofford has. And since Mike Young has left, they can't win consistently. Show me. Anybody? Bueller, Fry, show me. Well, now Furman's saying, you know what? You're going to have to back up, boop, 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 with that advantage, because we're going to do something about that.
Jerry Richardson holds 4,500 people. I think just short of that, maybe 4,000 is probably Furman's sweet spot. If you build it right, if you set up the acoustics for the room right so that it bounces sound back down into the arena, 4,000 in there would sound rocking.
Oh, yeah. And Diesel, one of the things I can tell you, I've never seen a stadium like this before, guys. Minute Maid Park in Houston, okay? You go to an Astros game there. Diesel, I don't even know how to describe this, but you're walking around the concourse and you have a view of the game wherever you are around the concourse. You know how at Bon Secours Wellness Arena, you leave the well, or you're walking out, or just about any other arena. When you walk out to the concourse, you can't see what's going on inside, right? You can't see what's going on in there. Minute Maid Park in Houston, you see the action wherever you are, and that Jerry Richardson indoor stadium is the same thing. We look forward to that every year. We do that show out there for the Carolina Panthers training camp. What's the Diesel? When we're done with that show, what's the best part?
We go inside the arena.
We go inside the arena. We have catered food. We had catered beverages. We get to go see training camp later. But we're in that eating for an hour to 2 hours, hour and a half. And it's awesome. And you love the fact that you can see the court from wherever you are.
If only they'd give us a basketball, we might skip training camp and just play basketball in there. I just found this on Yahoo Sports. They have reported that capacity currently is around 2,000 for basketball games. That will increase to 2,750 once the renovations are complete. So just shy of 3,000, which I think is probably perfect for them.
Perfect. But from the pictures, it looks like this is going to be a much more intimate basketball experience, as opposed to, just kind of it feeling like a multi-purpose venue. That's where I'm at with it. Let's see what you guys have to say. On the text line 71307, just start your text with the word fan, and away you go. Texter says, Mark, so good to hear your voice, sir. Thank you for allowing me to co-host for you. Heard Brandon, you and Diesel did a great job, so thank you so much for what you did last week. Texter says, hope it as nice as Wofford. Texter, nobody has it as good as Wofford. I feel like Jim Harbaugh right now. Who's got it better than us? Right?
Your hope is just to get close.
Yeah. Texter says Furman facilities will always be second class to Wofford. Go Terriers. Well, Furman has something to say about that. Texter says Furman needs to build an arena like Wofford has. So says Spur Daddy. Texter says that place Wofford has for basketball is super nice. So glad Furman is going to upgrade Timmons. They deserve it. Texter says $40 million and still no baseball team. Go Terriers. Go Terriers.
You guys
Wofford
can't
fans,
not take digs at each other.
They can't let that go. Like you can't.
Guys, I just wish Wofford was competitive on the court and on the football field so that this could be an actual rivalry instead of just a war of words.
Yeah, so Texter, explain to me how you have that facility and the basketball team is mediocre every year or worse. Explain that to me. You've got that facility. You don't have a 500 record in the SoCon Conference. What do you say? What's your excuse if you're the head coach? Like we've all had jobs where we felt like, man, I just don't have the resources to succeed. We've all had previous jobs where we felt that way, right? What the hell is your excuse if you're Wofford's head coach? Well, I'm in the South. There's a lot of basketball talent down here. I can recruit Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina.
I think the answer is I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah. I mean, what's your excuse? In fairness to Furman, baseball is not in the black financially for 99% of colleges that have that sport. So Furman is saying, look, we got to tighten the belt, tighten the purse strings. COVID is going on right now. And we're going to get rid of a sport that isn't making us money. And so, then all the Furman fans are upset that there's no baseball. But how many of those were financially supporting the team day in and day out? Financially supporting the team. You don't know what you got till it's gone, folks. So, look, I appreciate the back and forth. Wofford fan says, haha, you guys lost your baseball team. Furman fan says, haha, you guys have the nicest arena ever in a losing team to take it. Those are fair. I mean, I get it. I get it. Fair points back and forth.
Do you know what Wofford's football record was in 2023?
I'm going to guess, Diesel. I'm going to guess 2-9.
Bingo. 2-9.
All right. 2-9. And one of those wins was over
Furman.
Oh, no. God. No.
So it makes this rivalry so fun, even when one of them sucks.
No.
You're still beating the other.
Oh, man. All right, my friends. Coming up next on the show. Good to be back. Great to be here with you. South Carolina made a coaching change on the football team. What we think about it. And Diesel doesn't know this yet. And it's not going to be my opinion that does it. But Diesel is about to get set off when we come back. Right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan of. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 o'clock p.m. today. Great to have you guys with us. Texter says, let's see here. Mark, what's your opinion on the vote today on the 5-7 rule? The playoff committee will take the top 5 power conference champions, and then the 7 teams that the committee chooses. Diesel, I'm curious your take on this. I have no issue with it. And the reason is that there's only 4 Power 5 conferences now.
Right.
So this ensures that you have one little guy in. What would I like?
At least until they change the rule again.
Yeah, I would like to ensure that there's 2 little guys in, if I'm honest with you. I'd like you to take the 6 best conference championships. I'd like you to, in other words, Diesel, leave it as is, right? Like that's what it was before. That's what it was before the Pac-12 went away.
Sure.
They took the 6. So why not keep it the same way? You know, again, guys, what is the point of March Madness? The point of March Madness is not to give an opportunity to the 8th best team in the SEC. The point of March Madness is to see Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue. The point of the college football playoff is to see a great story for a little guy have a shot, as opposed to seeing like 9-3 LSU gets the last berth. It's not what the playoff is, Diesel.
I asked that question to Brent Beard last week, and we were talking about college football playoff expansion. I'm not talking the expansion to 12. He's telling me that people behind the scenes are already pushing to expand this thing to 16. You know, the conversation is, all right, we got 12. We had 4. All right, now let's go to 12. Okay, now that we're about to have 12, let's go ahead and start talking about 16. We'll just get this ball rolling a little bit. Then we'll push to 16 down the road. And there's talk of expanding the now field of 68 NCAA tournament field. And it's not designed to help get the more elite mid-majors into that tournament. It's designed to get more middle of the pack power conference teams into March Madness, because they want more brands in March Madness. I'm here to tell you, none of those teams have a chance. None of those teams have a chance. And when I looked up a list of all the elite teams, the lowest seeded team to ever make a deep run to the round of 32, to the round of 16, to the 8, to the championship, it was always mid-major teams. Elite mid-major teams get seeded lower, and they're able to make runs. You had to get all the way, I think, until the Elite 8, or maybe it was the Sweet 16, to see a power brand team make that run.
So how does college football need to be tweaked so that the little guy can have a similar run to what the little guy does in March Madness? Now, the furthest a Cinderella has ever gone has been the Final Four. Okay, the Cinderella has never won it. The lowest seed ever to win March Madness is an 8 seed. That was Villanova. Villanova isn't a Cinderella, but you've had a Cinderella run to the Final Four. The equivalent of that would be the college football playoff. I suppose, Diesel, you could say Cincinnati was the closest thing we've had to the Cinderella run to the Final Four. But the difference is we felt like, oh my gosh, George Mason has a chance. VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, they have a chance. It's kind of like the rest of the college football world pats the group of 5 on the head. Oh, this is cute. What a cute little run. Now let's have Alabama put you in your place, Cincinnati. You know, what has to happen for, in a one-game scenario, just one game, 60 minutes, you don't have to beat Alabama 3 times out of 5. You don't have to beat LSU 3 times out of 5. You got to be better than LSU in one game. But in that sport, you know, the difference between the haves and the have-nots is usually readily apparent in the first quarter, right?
Well, here's a very easy way to do it. It'll never happen because it's easy, it's fair. I think it would be fantastic to happen. The campus round, which is the first round of the 12-team playoffs, should that be the way they choose to do it, the group of 5 team needs to host the game. Like, imagine Alabama as, I believe, a 5 seed, because it'd be 5-12. Let's just say that the Liberty went in as a 12 seed. Alabama has to travel to Liberty. Give the little guy home field advantage. Like, there's not much more you can do beyond that to help the little guy, right? Because they'll automatically have to play one more game than everybody else. They'll have to play that extra game to play into an 8-team tournament. You can look at it like that, as a play-in for an 8-team tournament. So why not make the power team go on the road to play on campus at the group of 5?
The other thing I would say, Diesel, is NIL and the transfer portal very clearly now has not helped the little guy. There was a feeling for a
No.
while that we were going to, okay, well, now the third string at Alabama, the QB, is going to transfer to Boise State, because at Boise State he can play and he can make money, and this is going to prevent Alabama from hoarding guys, because it's become all about the money, and the little guy doesn't have money, right? So the rich are just getting richer, and that was never more evident than watching Liberty and Oregon play in the Fiesta Bowl. Diesel, that used to be a game where the Group of Five team had a shot. That game.
Well, Liberty
Oregon
also is brand new to FBS, so they don't have a ton of FBS depth. And Liberty played one of the weakest schedules in college football this year. So they had an impressive record when you look at the record on paper, but they weren't blowing a lot of teams out, and they were playing a weak schedule. Madcraft here, this is exactly what I'm talking about, Madcraft. He says the loss of revenue of having to play at Liberty would be insane. So they would never play that game at Liberty. They would never play that game at Georgia Southern if they were the team who got there. They would never play that game at East Carolina because you'd lose a lot of money. So what would they do? They put it at a neutral site. And where are they going to put these neutral sites? If it's Georgia, they're going to put it in Atlanta. Oh, geez. Yeah, neutral site. Georgia playing in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. Neutral site, my ass.
Let's see here. Texter says, Mark, why doesn't Furman just play their home games at the Weld downtown? Because that's not Furman's arena. Because the Bon Secours Wellness Arena is their own individual business entity, and they have found that business model works on an a la carte basis. You put big games downtown at the Well. Furman Wofford, a rivalry game, right? As an everyday thing, that's something that hasn't been broached. And let's be honest, guys, what the Well is, what, 11,000?
It's massive.
10,000?
It's way too big.
Like what kind of atmosphere are you getting for a regular season Furman versus Chattanooga game?
Even if you curtain off the upper deck, it's still way too big.
Let's see here. Want to congratulate Brandon and company. They're expecting their fourth daughter. Her name will be Aspen. So congratulations to Brandon and the Keeler family for that. Texter says, Mark, once again, the committee gets to be the judge over who gets in without putting the criteria in black and white on their site. Yeah, like that is a problem, Texter, but there's going to be no more Florida State left out. Okay? There's going to be no more. There's always an outcry for who gets out. And the proof that that's going to exist is it happens every year in March Madness. Oh, I cannot believe this team that was 17-13 and 8-8 in the Big East. I cannot believe the crime. Come on. You notice how that talk dies down really fast, super fast. It's because you're arguing over who is 68th best, right? That is the argument. All right, Diesel. I'm sorry in advance. Your blood pressure is about to raise. Here we go. So Dave Bartu is a numbers guy for college football. He runs the college football site, College Football Matrix. He's been saying this for over a decade and 100% agree with Coach Matt Rule, and the numbers absolutely support it. Support what? Josh Peterson, quote, tweets this saying, he does radio for USC 1620. I could not disagree more with this philosophy for scheduling. I know a lot of folks will carry the water for Rule in Nebraska, but this sucks. So here we go. First downs and second guesses. First things first, 6 wins, a bowl game. But with a move to a 12-team college football playoff in 2024, it's never too early for schools, including Nebraska, to formulate a plan to make a run at the playoff in the future. In my conversation with Husker coach Matt Rule, he indicated he would be against playing non-conference games against Power 5 teams. With USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington joining the Big Ten in 2024, it doesn't make sense, Rule says. In a year where you hope to play 15 or 16 games, why would you elect to play a really tough game early? A couple of years ago, if I had told you we were going to play Oregon and Washington as non-conference games, you'd say, holy smokes. Well, now that's the conference. So, Diesel, at least he's not saying they're going to avoid Group of 5 teams, but Matt Rule is saying now the quiet part out loud that, yes, we are going to doctor our schedule so we play effectively nobody because our job is to make the final 12. Mm-hmm. And then you realize what Florida has found themselves in, which is, Josh Pate said last week, what I've been echoing, Diesel, that Florida's schedule is the most difficult. Diesel, 9 out of 12 Florida opponents are top 25. Okay. 9 out of 12. Okay. Think about that for a minute. So, he's saying the quiet part out loud. You've seen Rutgers do this for years. You've seen Louisville do this for years. Why would you, if you don't have to, why would you do it? What's the incentive to play a difficult schedule? There isn't anymore. Florida's playing such a good schedule that all you guys are calling Billy Napier dead man walking. That sounds like a pretty dumb strategy, doesn't it? To have a schedule where the head coach is dead man walking. Like you could put Florida Atlantic in place of Florida State. Okay? You could do that and you could be fine. You could put Miami of Ohio on the schedule instead of Miami. Okay? You could do that and you could be fine. You could put East Carolina on your schedule instead of UCF. Big 12 school now. Sorry, sweetheart. Angela went to East Carolina University. And you'd be fine. Right? But Diesel, like the admission part. Do we give Matt Rule credit for being open and honest about the strategy here? Or, do you see the committee holding it against schools who have this policy?
No, they're not going to. The committee is going to do what they've always done, which is be distracted by. I don't have them. My car keys are in the other room, but it's just like a baby. When you dangle keys in front of a baby, they get distracted by the shiny thing, the red bouncing ball. That's what they pay attention to. And it's fine for Matt Rule and coaches to say things like this. But the truth is, Mark, not everybody can schedule Vanderbilt. Not everybody can schedule the worst team they can possibly find. I mean, as soon as the SEC goes to a 9-game conference schedule, they now only have 3 out of conference slots open. So all the teams that would be there's one extra team now who has to find somebody new to schedule next year. They can't schedule Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt only has 3 slots, and Vanderbilt, not everybody can rush to play them. So I think it's a little much to do about nothing. What would genuinely help Group of Fives when it comes to scheduling is, at least at the moment, until the day that the Big Ten and the SEC say, okay, we're each going to play 9 conference games, and your other 3 are going to be from the other conference, and you're not allowed to schedule Big 12s. You're not allowed to schedule ACCs. You're not allowed to schedule Mountain Wests or Conference USAs or American athletic schools. You can only schedule a Big 10 out of conference. Until that day comes, what would genuinely help the Group of Fives would be getting rid of FCS games off the schedules. You move those FCS games to a glorified spring game or a preseason game if you want to. We've gone over that many, many times on the show. There's no need to rehash the idea. But most fans of Clemson, most fans of South Carolina, they genuinely don't give a rip about seeing, Furman or Wofford or South Carolina State or the Citadel on the regular season schedule. They look at it, maybe not with Citadel in South Carolina, but they look at it as a guaranteed win. But if you remove those, put them in the fall before your season starts as a preseason game, you can still make money off of it. You can still charge tickets and have a big time. But that would be one way to help the Group of Fives schedule so that these big programs can't say, okay, well, until we make that rule, we're only going to schedule 3 FCS so that we have 3 guaranteed wins. We're going to go 3-0 out of conference no matter what. And then our conference record is what our conference record is.
Michigan's non-conference schedule. Okay. The last 2 years, Diesel. Are you ready? Colorado State, all games at home, by the way. No road games. Colorado
Shocker.
State, Hawaii, UConn. You can't, rather. East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green. Bowling Green. Michigan's non-conference schedule the last 2 years. Guys, some schools don't come out and advertise what Matt Rule just said and is going to get vilified for. But if you look at their actions, right? I mean, the saying is actions speak louder than words. Look at Michigan's actions. They're doing the same thing that Matt Rule said. And you know what, guys? In this landscape, I'd be doing the same thing. I got to go 10-2 in the SEC to make the playoff. I got to go 10-2. I got 8 games right now, soon to be 9 in the conference. Okay? I know that at least 2 losses are coming in the conference. So I need 4 games that I'm not going to lose to. Not only am I not going to schedule Utah if I'm Florida, I'm going to figure out how to get Florida State off the schedule. Like, I got to make the playoff.
What I do want to see, though, Mark, is I want to see the powers who believe themselves perennial playoff teams schedule Charmin soft. And then the teams that are sitting there in that 10 through 20 range, that type of program, they're going to have to schedule a little bit tougher because they're going to need the strength of schedule and strength of record argument against the fluff schedules of the power programs like Michigan and Alabama and Texas.
Yeah. And so will that happen? Will that be ultimately what takes place? Interesting strategies going on, some moving and shaking going around in the college football world. How can we get into the playoff? Why would you schedule anybody? Guys, you made this bed. All you people who wanted a bigger playoff, you made this bed. Now sleep in it. Up next, South Carolina made a coaching move in the last week. What it says about the lay of the land in college football. That's next here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Great to have you guys with us here on a Super Tuesday edition of the show. Tomorrow will be where? Ingalls Markets, of course. Boiling Springs, 8650 Asheville Highway. Full show, 3 to 7 p.m. Hope to see you out there if you're in the area. My friend. So in the last week, while I was away, Shawn Elliott, and this is, again, we continue to see this kind of weird thing happening where coaches for the first time seemingly ever, and never really explaining the why, taking coaching demotions in terms of title. Shawn Elliott leaves Georgia State to become the tight ends coach and run game coordinator at the University of South Carolina. So, in other words, he went back to a position that he held, more than a decade ago in his career. He's the age of 50, and he essentially said, okay, I'm going to demote myself to where I was when I was 38. Why would you do that?
Kane Womack of South Alabama did the same thing. He was head coach at South Alabama, took the job as the DC at Alabama.
Yeah, I'm not interested in going back 12 years in my career. I'm not interested in doing that. Okay. Why would anyone be interested in doing that? Well, I've seen some differing takes on this, and I got to be real with you guys. Many of these I don't agree with. Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, he'll be joining us a little bit less than an hour from now. He said, look, man, if coaches are going to do this, coaches going to up and leave, players can't leave either. I think that's missing the point of why this is happening. I think with the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness, it is suddenly attractive not to be in the crosshairs. Who's in the crosshairs? The head coaches. So if a Shawn Elliott is looking at the writing on the wall and he's like, man, all my good players at Georgia State are entering the transfer portal, and my AD is telling me he needs to see more in the way of wins, and I know I'm on the hot seat, and I'm looking at my roster, and the wins are just not going to happen this year. If you are Shawn Elliott, why wouldn't you do that? Okay? Now, again, this position is going to pay him well into six figures at South Carolina. He can live a very, very good life. It's probably not going to be much of a pay cut, if a pay cut at all. He gets to coach in the SEC. It's not going to be a long-term thing for him. And he just says, well, opposed to getting fired and see what that does for my career, I'm gonna get the eating while the eating's still good, right, Diesel?
Well, the sad thing is he's the best head coach Georgia State has ever had. There's 3 games under 500. Remember, that program is less than 15 years old.
Yeah.
In 7 seasons, off the top of my head, I believe he was 41-44. That's the stat I pulled last week. 41-44 in 7 seasons. The previous head coach in 4 seasons was like 9-32. And the coach before that was worse. This is a bottom feeder program, but it's not unexpected because it's a brand new program. He had 5 out of his 7 seasons winning seasons in Atlanta. 5 out of 7 were winning seasons. So I feel like he was maybe that close to getting the whole program, or during his tenure, as a plus 500 tenure or plus 500 program. But you're right. Why not take less responsibility, essentially make the same amount of money, go back somewhere that's familiar to you? He's got a house in the Columbia area. Apparently his family, his wife and his kids, stayed in Columbia while he was living and working in Atlanta. Why not? Have you ever seen the movie We Are Marshall?
Yeah.
Remember that scene where he tried to go back and ask the previous OC or assistant coach or whatever to coach with him? And he was building his shed, and he was going through, like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I can emotionally handle. And his the head coach's strategy was, well, if you're putting wood on the top of this shed, why don't you just use bigger boards? You get the same coverage, but with less boards. It's the same thing. You get the same amount of money with less responsibility, and it's not all on your shoulders.
Right. And so why would Chip Kelly leave UCLA? Well, the report came out in December that he was on the chopping block, and he's losing all of his good players, and he's tired of having to re-recruit his roster every single year. So he takes a job where that is part of his responsibility, but not solely his responsibility. He broke up with UCLA before UCLA broke up with him. Shawn Elliott broke up with Georgia State before Georgia State broke up with him, and he gets to go to the SEC. He's looking at he's looking at the writing on the wall, and he's saying to himself, and he's saying to his wife, look, man, I am going to be out after this year. We don't have the talent to compete. So why wouldn't I take this job? As opposed to going through the next 10 months of your life where, between now and December, you're up against it in terms of getting the wins that you need to keep your job. You want a good life for your family? You want a bad life for your family? You want a high-pressure environment for your family? You want to go coach in the SEC? If Shane Beamer loses his gig in a year or two, so what? At least you weren't the one who was getting fired, right? Like, it's like, oh, man, like, then you were a victim if Shane Beamer got fired. Oh, man, that sucks. I'm so sorry. It didn't work out. Yeah, he was kind of on the hot seat. Like look at these guys who lose their jobs. They end up way down the ranks. Jim McElwain goes from Florida to Central Michigan, right? Will Muschamp chose the coordinator route at major schools as opposed to going the small school route. But you see this all the time. Shawn Elliott, if he gets fired from a group of 5, what's the future for him? And he knows he can't compete. So that's why you're going to see this. That's why you're seeing so many coaches, Cliff Kingsbury, etc., take any job they can get me out of this hell that is college football right now. And to me, guys, I've always said this. We are nationalist elitists when it comes to sports in this country. We only like the best, right? We like women's soccer better than men's soccer because our women's team is better. Our men's team stinks. We like women's tennis better than men's tennis. Why? Because women's tennis gave us Serena Williams, the Williams sisters. Our men's tennis stinks. We gravitate towards what we're great at. There was one exception to that, and that is college football. And that's because college football was different. It was about the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back. The students, the players had the same experience you did. We all were struggling financially. There was a bond. You guys were all going through the blood, sweat, and tears together. If college football is just going to feel like a minor league NFL, then the bond, the thing that makes college football special, is gone. Poof, out of here. You're starting to see the fallout from that right now. And this sport cannot have guardrails fast enough. Great to be with you guys on a Super Tuesday edition of the show. All right, my friends. Has she single-handedly put women's sports in the mainstream? We'll tackle that next here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. What's good, my friends? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 o'clock p.m. today. Fantastic to have you guys with us. Could not do it all without you. Thank you for making this happen for us. Okay, so guys, there is something unbelievable going on right now in sports. Okay, like this is unbelievable. And unless you are a get off my lawn guy, you're creeping into my territory kind of stuff, stay in your lane kind of dude, you appreciate this because it's actually freaking beautiful. It is beautiful. And what I'm talking about is what Caitlin Clark is doing in women's college basketball. Now, I'm going to put this, maybe you're a big social media person, maybe you're not, but I'm going to put this into terms you can understand in terms of, like popularity and fame and impact and so on and so forth. Guys, the basketball player on the men's side with the biggest social media following on Twitter is Armando Bacot, North Carolina. He's got 58,000 followers, okay? The college football player with the greatest following on Twitter, okay, is Marvin Harrison Jr., Ohio State. He has 96,000 followers, okay? If I take the average of the top 10 best players in college basketball, like you look up a list, top 10 players in college basketball right now, the average of those guys have a following of 15,600 followers on Twitter. Top 10 players in college. Sounds pretty low, right? Like,
yeah, you'd think it'd be 50,000.
Like, you've got 7 or 8. I've got 9,000 followers,
yeah.
Right? Like, the top 10 players are at 15,600. That's their average. The number one guy is Armando Bacot. More on him and why he leads the way with 58,000 in a minute. Caitlin Clark has 183,000 followers on Twitter. She is, folks, not the biggest star in women's college basketball. She is the biggest star in collegiate sports, period. Oh, Mark, what about Liv Dunn? She's got 4.9 million Instagram followers. Okay, guys. Do you know that Insta, as the kids call it, is the app that has lost more followers than anybody else? Do you also know why people are following Liv Dunn on Instagram? I mean, is it about her career? Is it about her profession? Or is it about her appearance? You know, hey, man, you know, you're a 20-something single dude. Where can I see scantily clad Olivia Dunn? Instagram, there she is. Boom. 4.9 million followers.
She was on 60 Minutes talking about that, which blew me away.
Yeah.
Like, she's probably never seen 60 Minutes. They contact her. Who is this? I know all these podcasts. I know all the, what is 60 Minutes? I'd never heard of it. And they're like, isn't it weird that dudes from across the country will flock, like when LSU does a meet at UCLA? Isn't it weird that dudes will flock there and will shout things at you that, like, they remember from your Instagram account from a year ago? She said, yeah, that's the creepiest part. It's like all of these guys feel like they know you because they follow you on Instagram. They think they can have intimate personal conversations with you in public because they follow you on Instagram, and there was some nugget that you revealed in a post a year ago that was a little too personal. I maybe shouldn't have posted that.
Right. So Anna Kournikova, Diesel, was she more famous for her looks or for her tennis?
Her looks.
Paige Spiranak, is she more famous for her looks or her golf? Olivia Dunn, she more famous for her looks or her gymnastics? Right? I mean, I'm not trying to say there's not a legitimacy factor there, okay? But there's not a legitimacy factor there. She's huge on the platform where you see pictures of her. Where your platform is based more on what you've done, Caitlin Clark is the biggest collegiate star in amateur athletics today. And I have to use amateur loosely because of what's becoming of collegiate sports. So my question to you guys is this. At 844-FAN-PHONE, that's 844-FANFONE, that's 844-326-3663 on the Renewal by Anderson fan phone. Is the place for women's sports in mainstream primetime television now solidified? Is it now solidified? All right. Because Caitlin Clark is bringing women's sports to the marquee. She's bringing them to primetime. She's bringing them to the mainstream. Let's hear from you. Let's hear your calls. 844-326-3663. I'll tell you what brought me to this topic. Okay, Sunday before last. So it's Super Bowl Sunday. Sunday before last, I'm on the phone with my old man. And he goes, Mark, you watching Caitlin Clark today? I said, Dad, no, I'm not watching Caitlin Clark. It's Super Bowl Sunday. Why would I be watching Caitlin Clark on Super Bowl Sunday? He goes, well, Mark, she has the chance to grab the record. Record for what? You know, it's like I'm not doing a great job when my dad is telling me things that are going on in sports that I'm not aware of. Break the record, Mark, for the most points all time scored in women's basketball. She's at Nebraska. And my dad was all into it. So I said, whoa, I'll check this out as well. And as I'm watching this, it dawned upon me. Consider the reach of that for my dad to reach out to me and say, are you watching Caitlin Clark? Now, let me tell you about my dad in sports. My dad, love him for it, is responsible for my love of sports. But as he's gotten older, he's a big event kind of guy, okay? Like, he doesn't watch Gators regular season basketball. He'll watch the Final Four, but nothing before the Final Four. He'll watch the Super Bowl, maybe the conference championship games, but he's not watching regular season games. He doesn't watch regular season baseball. My dad is only in it for sports if there's a big event in sports. That's what he's into. And so for him to tell me, Mark, are you watching Caitlin Clark today? Go for the record. Think of the penetration, okay, that moment had for that to reach him and for him to be geeked about it, for him to be excited about it. In Lincoln, Nebraska, where Iowa was upset by Nebraska on that day, literally miles the line stretched for For a 1 p.m. tip-off, lines were forming at 6 a.m. People camped out overnight. You had the Star Wars nerds who camp out for Star Wars movies, this time camped out to watch women's basketball.
They turned it into Duke, North Carolina, where Cameron crazy students camp. That's the insanity of the Duke fan base. These kids are rich. They have beautiful state-of-the-art stone dorms to live in, but they choose to live in tents outside the basketball arena.
That's it. And that's it. And like
just to get the best seats.
It's incredible. It's a lot of times it's cold out there. So, guys, Caitlin Clark did that not just this last weekend. She's doing that. She's doing that everywhere she goes. She is the traveling road tour that is the Beatles of college athletics. It has been over a year since Caitlin Clark failed to play a sellout on the road. Do you realize like what she is right now is a movement? Well, Mark, outside of that, give me some hard data. Okay, how about this? For the first time ever last year, women's tickets to the Final Four exceeded the men's. But they didn't just exceed the men's. They were 3 times as expensive as the men's. Now think about that. Never before in the history of women's basketball has a women's Final Four ticket cost more than a men's. And because of one person, they're now 3 times as much. So why is this? Why is this? Like, why doesn't college basketball, men's college basketball, have a star like this? It's why Cliff Ellis left Coastal Carolina. There's no continuity. It's literally one and done, which is what college football is becoming. And Caitlin Clark has been at Iowa 4 years. Now back to Armando Bacot, Diesel. Why is he so popular? He's been at North Carolina for 4 years, right? He is making money hand over fist. His NBA prospects aren't great. He's one of those really good college players that doesn't really project. He's like a 6'8" beefy guy. And the NBA is going more towards like the Victor Wembanyama, can run the whole floor, can shoot threes. He's a beefy, down low, 6'8" guy who might not even be drafted. But at North Carolina, he'll make 7 figures. He'll be a star. He's been there 4 years. They know him. There's continuity. He's given him something that the rest of college athletics, college basketball is not. And so he is the most famous male basketball player. But folks, Caitlin Clark, this is beautiful.
It is up to this is an opportunity that women's college basketball has to seize on. Now, Caitlin Clark, she has another year if she chooses to come back. I think she's one of the final season, and somebody help me out if I'm wrong here. Her class is the final class that will have 1 extra year of COVID eligibility. She can come back for 1 more if she wants to.
She can. Yeah.
And the question is the NCAA prepared to try to market stars after she's gone? You know, because what's happened to golf after Tiger fell off? Now, he's still out there. He's still playing. But Tiger, even though there's 50 players out there better than Tiger, I mean, Tiger's not even making the day 2 and day 3 cuts most of the time he enters anymore. But Tiger is still the biggest draw everywhere he goes. Despite, you know, Spieth and Rahm and all these guys being better golfers than Tiger Woods, they're not draws. So what is college basketball going to do to create more stars after Caitlin Clark eventually moves on from the sport?
That's $1 million question. So here's what we're already seeing. Paige Bueckers, UConn. Okay, Paige Bueckers, UConn has already announced that instead of going to the WNBA, she's coming back. She's coming back to UConn. Why? She's a bigger deal at UConn than she will be in the WNBA. Guys, here's the reality, okay? My feeling is that women's basketball needs to lower the rim. You don't have the most exciting play in the sport, which is the slam dunk. The fundamentals are better, but the oohs and ahs come from alley-oops and slam dunks. That's not sexist to say. They give the women's game has smaller basketballs because they have smaller hands. Why don't you have a shorter rim, a lower rim for shorter players who, oh, by the way, are not just shorter, they don't jump as high. They don't have the same reach, right? Like apparently that is sexist. So, you know, guys, like the WNBA, they've tried to give us this product we have decided we don't like the product that is the WNBA. So what the NBA does is they make you take on WNBA games in order to have the NBA. Okay, TNT, okay, ESPN, you're going to buy the NBA? Well, you're also going to carry 30 WNBA games. And that comes with the package. But we're not watching the WNBA. Like nobody cares. The product isn't great. You get a transcendent star like Iowa, like Caitlin Clark at Iowa, Diesel, she's going to be so much bigger at Iowa than she's ever going to be. I worry for her that we're going to forget about her when she goes to the WNBA.
We will. The one issue with changing the game, and I understand your point here of adding the high-flying element of men's college basketball into women's college basketball. The difference is you are now fundamentally changing the game to where it's going to force you're essentially setting the sport back 15 years because little girls who are starting to play basketball, once they get to the point where they're playing on a 10-foot rim, that's all they know how to shoot at. They're elite at shooting at 10-foot rims. So you change the height of the rim, you change the size of the rim, you change the spring rate in the rim. You're going to change the game, and it's going to cost a whole generation of players a big chunk of their game. And the question is, are you willing to do that?
I don't think it's nearly the difference you make it out to be, Diesel. Like, for example, look, I'm an amateur shooter, right? I had a rim that you could raise or lower. I didn't shoot markedly different depending on where the thing was. But I will mention this to you. This was awesome. The Sabrina Ionescu and Steph Curry shootout in the three-point shooting contest. She said, Diesel, no, I'm going to shoot from the NBA line, not the WNBA line. The NBA line is further back. She shot from a line that she's not used to shooting from. And she scored tied for the highest score that any other NBA player did that was in the three-point shooting contest. So the winning score of the three-point shooting contest was 26. She scored 26. Problem is she wasn't competing against them. She was competing against Steph Curry. Steph Curry put up 29. And so the line didn't bother her. Let's get to Rick in Greer, who's up next. Hey, Rick. You're offsides, buddy. What's good?
Hey, Mark. I just wanted you to know there's a player behind Caitlin Clark that is 30 points lower than her. You knew that, didn't you?
A player behind Caitlin Clark that is 30 points lower than her. Hit me.
She's got only 30 points less than Caitlin Clark. They showed it yesterday.
Okay. Cool.
But Rick, do you know her name?
I'm trying to remember it.
So yeah, there you go. There you go. That's our point, though. Caitlin Clark is a star. Whoever this Caitlin Clark sub 30-point player is, nobody knows who she is.
By the way, Caitlin Clark, Greg, Rick has 3,569 points. She takes on top 15 Indiana on Thursday. She is 98 points away from surpassing Pistol Pete Maravich, the all-time leading scorer, men's or women's college basketball. And she could play for another year. How about that?
Yeah, but this girl can play 2 more years, Mark.
Okay. But it's not just about records, Rick. Rick, it's not just about records. It's about the impact you're having on the game. Okay? Right. That's my point. Okay. Rick, thanks for the call. We got a lot of noise coming up in the background there, Rick, but I appreciate the call.
It's not like Rick was Rick, were you over here at the go-kart track next to the studios? Where are you? Roll up your window, please.
Maybe Rick was talking about Juju Watkins next at Southern Cal. She can do it all. She does everything better than Caitlin now except shoot. The crazy thing is Caitlin is Steph Curry. Like in terms of the range, in terms of the shots, in terms of the passing ability, in terms of the IQ. She is Steph Curry playing women's basketball.
And Rick, we needed a little more context. That's what we were trying to get out of you. 30 points behind Caitlin Clark. What does that mean? This season? Average per game? Career? It's not career. If she's 2 years younger than her, she wouldn't be 30 points behind her in her career. Otherwise, she would have to be dramatically outscoring Caitlin Clark night in and night out, which she's not. Are you talking about 30 points fewer on the season? That's what we don't know what you mean.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he means there either, but she's 98 points away from being the all-time leading scorer. And if she comes back another year, that's going to be one of those most unbreakable records in all of sports.
Well, that's something we talked about last week as well. What do you do with somebody who has an extra year of eligibility in the record books? That's not fair to compare somebody who had 5 years worth of stats to somebody who had 4 years worth of stats. It's not an equal comparison, and it would be tragic. These are Brent Beard's words, not mine. It would be tragic to have to put an asterisk next to Caitlin Clark's name. Like, are you going to say her official record is what she achieved in her first 4 years of eligibility? Because that's the only thing you can compare anyone else to is your first 4 years, not your last 4 years, because then you've essentially said, okay, well, the season where you're the youngest, you don't know the system, you're maybe not playing as many minutes, we're not going to count that year. Well, everybody else is counting that year for them, their freshman season. We're not going to count Caitlin Clark's freshman season. We're going to count her sophomore, junior, senior, and super senior seasons. Well, no. You got to count her freshman through senior years. That's what her official record has to be. Otherwise, if she gets another entire season to put up 30, 40 points a night, she's going to put that record so far out of reach because anybody coming after her, no matter how great they might be, would have to be scoring 70 or 80 points a night to be able to approach her record.
Guys, is the place for women's sports in mainstream primetime television now solidified because of Caitlin Clark? Give us a ring, 844-326-3663. That's what we're discussing right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Rolling on until 7 o'clock p.m. today. We've got Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered joining us in the next segment of the show. Yeah, I think with Caitlin Clark, man, there's sometimes we just don't realize the magnitude of greatness when it's right in front of us. Like when you're going through it in real time, everything that was truly great feels like it's something that happened a long time ago or hasn't happened yet. Sometimes we need to be convinced that what we're seeing truly is as special as we think it is. And the crazy thing is, like, Caitlin Clark is rolling into women's gyms and she's got Steph Curry ability, and so much of the rest of the women's game hasn't caught up yet. So you're seeing literal domination at a high level of play that you're not used to seeing. You're like she's making these scholarship women's basketball players look like they're 6 years old with some of the things she's doing to them out there. It's insane.
Yeah, college basketball as a whole needs to do a better job marketing its stars if what Rick is saying is true, that there's a player who's 30 points behind Caitlin Clark, whatever that means, season total. I don't know what you mean, Rick. You don't even know her name. What does that say? That says that somebody is doing a crap job of marketing stars. Same is true of NCAA basketball. I mean, outside of Armando Bacot and a couple of other ACC guys, I couldn't name anybody on any other roster outside of the ACC. I don't know the star player from Houston's name. I don't know the star player from UConn's name. And I know that's how some of you want it. You want the name on the front of the jersey to matter more than the name on the back. But we as a society, we are drawn to individual stars. It's just true. That's why the NBA is so different from college basketball, is because we market individual stars in the NBA, not so much the teams they play for, but we market the teams they play for, not so much the stars in college basketball. You could say you're orienting it more towards a team game, and that's great. That's totally fine. The brand of the team matters more than the star players.
Guys,
But fans want to go follow on social media star players. That's what they want to do. So we need to do a better job of marketing these stars.
When Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark played last year in the women's national championship game, the game drew nearly 10 million viewers. That is by far the largest audience ever to watch a women's basketball game. Pro, college, anything. Remember how big a deal it was last year when Caitlin Clark played South Carolina in the Final Four? That was one of the last events, sports-wise, that I got to watch with Angela's father, who, by the way, you guys remember if you listen to the show, he passed away last April, and yesterday was his birthday. And so we did like a little candlelight vigil for him and memories with Jackson and Angela, and tears were shed, but also good memories and everything like that. But he was into it. Like, I remember he had 1 or 2 months to live, and Caitlin Clark against South Carolina last year, like, that had him into it. You know, I was into it. Okay. And it became impossible. Like, I like the teams we covered a fair well. It became impossible not to root for Caitlin in Iowa, Caitlin Clark, because of the story, right? So when she and Angel Reese in Iowa versus LSU drew nearly 10 million viewers for the women's national championship game last year, it was the first time a women's sport finally became mainstream and a part of water cooler conversation. The first time ever outside of the Olympics or the World Cup that women's sports had drawn a mass audience on network television. Think about that. Can you get a mass audience for the Olympics? Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Katie Ledecky, Michael Phelps, okay? You can get a mass audience there. Can you get a mass audience for the Women's World Cup? Yes, you can. But for anything other than international competition, biggest events in international competition, domestically, had a women's sporting event ever been massive? No. Caitlin Clark delivered that. She is delivering that. Okay? And if you don't think she is the biggest star in college sports, men or women, you need to ask somebody, because it's not even close. She's number one. Olivia Dunn is number two. Marvin Harrison Jr., who's going to the NFL, is number three. Okay? Look it up. This is rock star Beatles status, and it's right there in front of your ever-loving faces.
So I'm putting up a poll at the Fan Upstate on Twitter. If Caitlin Clark returns to Iowa next year, her extra COVID season, should points she scores count towards her NCAA scoring record? And the options are simple. Yes, of course they should count, or no, an extra year gets an asterisk.
We've got Chris Phillips coming your way next, right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate, joined right now by the owner, founder, host of SEC Unfiltered. His name is Christopher Phillips. Chris, do you walk toward or away from Christopher?
I was thinking, Mark, and first things first, appreciate you and Diesel having me on. I was thinking pulling out the government name today. I don't necessarily run away from it. I don't think anybody at this point calls me Christopher except my parents and my family. So, if you want to go with that, I'm not necessarily going to stop you, but, yeah, that one caught me all a little off guard, Mark. I got to be honest. So,
there you go.
Happy Tuesday to y'all as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So Chris, Caitlin Clark, we're discussing her. And we're discussing the fact that, lines are wrapped around the building. She hasn't played in a road non-sellout in over a year. The women's Final Four outrated the men. The women's tickets to the Final Four were 3 times the cost of the men. They've never been 1 penny more than the men before last year. There were 3 times as much. Are you willing to admit, as I have, that she isn't the biggest star in women's college basketball? She is the biggest star in college sports, men or women, period. And what she is doing from an engagement and traffic standpoint is unprecedented.
Yeah, Mark, I think that's fair. Especially when you talk college basketball, specifically both men's and women's. I can't think of a men's player that, maybe Bronny James had the opportunity to be that out there at Southern Cal, obviously the son of LeBron James, but I don't think he's really, he hasn't transcended the game or done anything overly noteworthy that at least I can think of or have heard about. So, yeah, I think Caitlin Clark, she's the Steph Curry, I guess, of women's college basketball. And what she does on a nightly basis is incredible. And certainly, it's become must-see TV. You know what I mean? I think to your point, man, I'm thinking about the Final Four and watching last year, what she did against South Carolina and what she did throughout the postseason. And, I'll be really curious to tune in again and just see how, if it's South Carolina, if it's another SEC team that she matches up against, right, how she fares. It's truly become a must-have ticket if she's in your city. So I think certainly when you think of star power, and Mark, that's what we gravitate towards is personalities and stars. I think, I don't think you can find another one that's bigger or more influential than Caitlin Clark is in all of college basketball.
Chris, I got a heck of a laugh out of Dawn Staley's reaction the night that Caitlin Clark broke her record. That was the first question she asked was, she stopped the press conference. Hey, did Caitlin get it? Did she get the record? And the person who answered the question said, yeah, she got 23 in the first quarter. And Dawn's reaction was, God, dog. If Caitlin Clark returns to Iowa for an extra season, and she still has a COVID year of eligibility if she wants it would be financially smart for her to do it because she's probably making a lot of money at NIL, and she wouldn't be making that much or nearly have the star power and effect in the WNBA. Should her 5th year COVID eligibility point totals count towards her career record as far as the record books goes? Because anybody coming behind her wouldn't have a chance to break her 5-season record in just 4 seasons. They would have to be putting up 80 points a night every night starting as a freshman to even have a chance.
Yeah, Diesel, I think it should count. I don't think you can pick and choose, what records, do and do not count, or what seasons do and do not count. The first thing I thought of when you were mentioning that about, getting COVID years and breaking records was, Parker White setting the, setting the points record at South Carolina. And he obviously played in the 5th year and had a kick back in the 2021 Dukes Mayo Bowl that put him over the edge. And, again, it took him 5 years to do what Elliott Fry did in 4. And I always have that debate with people that I think Elliott Fry is the greatest kicker in school history because, again, he did what Parker White did in 5. He did that in 4. But, it still counts. So, I think it should count. It's, you take advantage of the system when you can, when it's in favor of you. And I think that's what she's doing. If she does decide to come back, and like you mentioned, I think it will be a really smart move. So, I think you got to count it. And certainly I think it's going to put more than likely you feel like the record out of reach. But, who knows, man, athletes keep getting better and the game keeps evolving. And, 10, 15 years from now, we could be talking about the next Caitlin Clark or something better than Caitlin Clark. So, but no, certainly, I think that you got to count it. And it certainly feels like it's going to put that record out of reach.
Are you still a Gamecocks fan, Chris?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, it's Chris, it's easy for me to get caught up in what I do and who we cover and you typically want the teams you cover to fare well, right? I mean, that's typically one thing that you do. But with you now covering all the SEC, I'm wondering if there's going to be a waning of your Gamecock fandom.
I mean, I think I've been very, very objective for quite some time, Mark. And as I've mentioned before, whether it be off air, on air, whatever, I mean, I think there's been things that have happened off the field, off the record, that maybe in due time folks will know about when it comes to dealing with the University of South Carolina, dealing with folks behind the scenes.
How about you share one of those? Can you share one of those here today? I'll share one. I'll share one. Well, Shane Beamer got mad at me one day.
Right. I mean, I don't think, it's on public record that, Justin King, who's the creative media director at South Carolina, publicly went on record trying to publicly humiliate me and drag my name and my business through the mud, and has done so, by the way, throughout Columbia with other people that have reached out to me and sent me screenshots of texts and messages and stuff like that, which is totally fine. I mean, DeCaverion Joyner is another example of last year, trying to publicly humiliate me on social media and drag my name and business to the mud. So, over the years, Mark, I would say this, like I still pull for South Carolina. I wish nothing but the best for South Carolina, but was I more of a diehard fan from the standpoint of a lot of my decision-making was guided by the fandom scope? Yes, it was, right? That was 2017. It's only, it's only human nature that when you go through certain things and you see the harsh realities and the business scope and the business side, and that, as I grew and evolved, that the business, the business side of things became more important, and I started making decisions and operating from a business scope more so than a fandom scope. So I'm still a fan of South Carolina. I'm not going to sit here and totally denounce my fandom of the Gamecocks, but I mean, I got to a point where I was painfully objective, Mark. Like some people don't want to hear the truth, the realities, and the objectivity, and certainly the diehards don't want to hear that. And I think that was a lot of the reason for some of the butting heads, in those last days of TSUS. People just did not want to hear, especially when you go 5-7 and things aren't going well. But I mean, I just think there's a lot of things, been again behind the scenes, off the record, and some very public that happened that it just kind of puts things in perspective, and then you got to evolve and make the best decisions for you. So,
Chris, we spent a segment earlier talking about Matt Rule coming out and very publicly stating what Nebraska's scheduling policy should be going forward. I think the annual top 5 type programs, the Michigans, the Georgia, the Alabama type of programs, they can afford to schedule soft outside of their conference schedule and try to achieve that perfect record. But I think the 6 through 20 type of programs will need to schedule a little tougher to build a strength of schedule and to build a resume, so that if it comes down to who's in that 11 through 14 spot, they have a case. And I think South Carolina will eventually exist in that range more often than not. How do you want South Carolina to schedule out of conference? What should the strategy be for a program like South Carolina with a limited number of spots available?
I mean, Diesel, whether it's an 8-game conference schedule or a 9-game conference schedule, which Texas's athletic director obviously hinted that that is coming, which I think is a smart move and the right move. But no matter how many conference games it is, 8 or 9, and then you've got the Clemson game, I think South Carolina would be very wise to schedule 3 cupcakes. I do. And I don't care how that sounds. I don't care what people think about it. You're trying to stack up wins. That's if you can add 3 wins to your schedule yearly, and until this changes to where, a game of all due respect against like a Furman or a Georgia State or a Wofford is a spring game or whatever, and these are still going to be games that we play in the college football season, I just don't think there's a lot of glory in scheduling really, really tough out of conference, because if you perform well in the SEC, like the SEC doesn't have this problem where we got to boost our resume. If you win in the SEC, you're going to the playoff. Like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, if you take care of your business in conference play, you don't have to schedule some out of conference game to prove yourself. Like, you're playing the best week in, week out. So, I think it would be wise. I mean, you guys, you saw last year what can happen, right? And nobody's making excuses. I mean, South Carolina, I think that was arguably their worst performance of the year in week 1, where you just showed up completely laid an egg against North Carolina. But that is the risk of doing that when you schedule a quality out of conference opponent that, you had question marks going in the season, right? If you had sort of a layup opponent in week one. You could have figured some things out. You could have ironed out the kinks, if you will, because that team looked a lot different, right? In week 3 against Georgia, and I know they ended up not being very good, but that was the difference between go into a bowl game and not go into a bowl game, and we all know how big of a deal that is in Columbia. So I just don't. I think there's much more to lose than there is to gain trying to schedule. And I think it's every now and then it's cool. Like the game, I believe it's next year. They're going to take on Virginia Tech for very obvious reasons. I think that's going to be cool with Shane Beamer taking on his dad's school, if you will, and obviously he's an alum of there. So. But as cool as they are, I just don't think there's a lot to gain from it, especially if you're a school like South Carolina and you're trying to build your program and stack wins. I think Kentucky, Missouri, those are a couple of schools. They've done a master class of scheduling soft in the non-conference, and they build momentum and momentum and hype and being 4-0 early on. That's a good thing. I don't really care who you've played. So I just don't know that there's a lot of glory in scheduling tough in the non-conference.
Chris, I was out last week, but I went on Twitter and I saw something you said about Shawn Elliott that I kind of strongly disagreed with. I want to bring you into this. You said something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, tell me if I'm quoting you accurately here. You said, well, look, it's hard to blame the players for leaving when the coaches are doing this. And I was looking at that, Chris, and I was saying, wait a minute, he's leaving because the players are doing that. It's a chicken and the egg thing, Chris. Like you're seeing coaches take lesser positions, take demotions in title because they're being told that they need to win, or, they're on the hot seat. Here's what we expect. You need to win this year. They're looking at their roster, all their good players left, and they know that's not possible. So as opposed to in the beginning of February, going through 10 months of hell, knowing you're going to lose your job anyway, why not break up with them before they break up with you? I mean, that to me is very clearly what Chip Kelly did. It's very clearly to me, the guy that became the DC, Jeff Hafley of the Green Bay Packers, very clearly what he did, very clearly what Shawn Elliott did. I do feel like you can see that this is happening as a result of the mess that college football has become.
And you mentioned it and you paraphrased it, Mark, or worded it as it's a breakup. And I think in any breakup, there's two sides to every story, right? So I think, and I say that to say that I think, we could speak on behalf of Shawn Elliott and the coaches and justify what they do. We could also speak on the players and justify what they do. So, I think that I understand why Shawn Elliott left Georgia State. I get the NIL challenges. I get the portal. He's coming into a really tough year. They were 129th in returning experience. And so it almost felt like Shawn Elliott was going into a no-win situation this fall. The program, it felt like it kind of reached its peak, and it seemed like Georgia State may be in a position where they're ready to move on. And I totally respect Shawn Elliott not wanting to add once fired head coach to his resume. I guess my only point was you're just going to have a really hard time ever getting rid of the transfer portal or fighting that kids should have less right to do what's best for them when coaches can literally up and leave whenever they want. And I mean, but again, we can go back and forth. We can go in circles. I agree with you that there needs to be, the calendar is totally messed up. And I agree with you 110%, but the timing of it is, it's a tough look. I mean, just call it for what it is. And I don't care how garnet glasses, diehard Gamecock fan you are, just try to take that away for a moment. Like, it's a tough look. The timing is tough when he left. They had began spring practice. Like, I just don't understand how you don't know this weeks in advance. I guess the position wasn't open because Justin Stepp was still there. But I mean, if this was happening at a bigger school, right? If instead of leaving Georgia State, he was leaving Georgia, and I know that may not be a great example because you'd never leave Georgia to be the tight ends coach at South Carolina. But even if this was like Cal, or if this was a Power 5 job, I think it'd be a bigger storyline, and it's already got a lot of people talking. So at the end of the day here, listen, I like Shawn Elliott, friend of the show. I had him on the show back in summer of 22 before they took on South Carolina in that season opener. Like Shawn Elliott a lot, liked him when he was at South Carolina. I think he's a great pickup and a great addition for Shane Beamer, what he's going to mean for the running game as a whole, because he is going to be that running game coordinator. And I'd say the last time they had a high-level running game consistently was when Shawn Elliott was there. The physicality he's going to bring, the way he's going to boost that culture. I mean, I think it's a great pickup, but certainly the way it happened is it's kind of a rough look. But I just think you're going to have a hard time again justifying that players shouldn't have the rights they have when they can up and go when coaches can do the very same thing.
Chris, looking at the very young SEC baseball season so far, man, it's got to be tough for Mark to know that his Florida Gators are the only team in the SEC that are below 500 after their first week. Ole Miss being 2-2, notwithstanding.
I didn't know that. I didn't even know that.
Well, 2 of your games were canceled, I assume, due to weather. But what were the biggest surprises for you in the opening weekend? Is there anything that's concerning to you in the opening weekend? For example, Arkansas, a top 5 program, they lost to James Madison, who were, I believe, picked to finish 10th in the Sun Belt in the standings this year. Did anything jump out at you, whether it be really exciting things that you saw or concerning things that you might have seen?
Yeah, Diesel, it's kind of interesting. Baseball puts us in a really interesting position when it comes to content because, the way that we generate, and you guys know this, right? The way you get engagement, the way you get people to listen to your radio show or tune in a podcast, to have bold takes and opinions and very big takes and big opinions and reactions. And, baseball is a game where you can't really overreact to one weekend, or you probably shouldn't, but just to play along, right? And the Florida Gators, by the way, I'm nervous about Florida because tough start in regards to the baseball gods. I don't know. The baseball gods are showing early. Maybe they hate Florida. You lose game 1. Games 2 and 3 get canceled due to weather.
There is no God, Chris, that hates Florida. Okay, let's make that abundantly clear. No God anywhere hates the Gators. Okay, God shines among the Gators. Okay, when the sun goes down, it's orange. Okay, and it goes down over blue. So just make sure you understand that. Okay?
What I heard was something sun shines on a dog's ass. That's what I heard.
Fair enough. Well, they got a big midweek tonight against North Florida, trying to get that first up. But I mean, I think surprises in the first weekend. LSU walked 27 hitters. I mean, they swept obviously, but to see the LSU pitching staff struggle with control, I mean, you obviously have to get that shored up. You mentioned Arkansas losing to James Madison. I thought in the first game, you saw a couple SEC aces get roughed up, right? Hagen Smith for Arkansas was one of them. Gave up a 4 spot in the top of the first on opening day, which nobody saw coming. Cade Fisher for Florida, same thing with him. Thatcher Hurd for LSU, he got roughed up in that opening day start, which, again, I don't think it's anything to overreact to necessarily. There's a lot of baseball to be played, but typically you expect the pitching to be a bit ahead of the hitting, and we saw offenses go crazy this weekend. I mean, LSU had 27 runs in their Sunday win. South Carolina throwing a no-hitter, right? The big question for them was, can the pitching do enough this year? And again, it's against Miami of Ohio, right? We're going to find out a lot more down the road when they start, they take on Clemson in a few weeks, and then conference play will begin. But Roman Kimball was a guy that was, transferred from Notre Dame, sat out last year with Tommy John and coming back from injury. And he threw the baseball beautifully, and you throw a combined no-hitter in, I believe, 7 or 8 innings. So, I mean, a great start for that pitching staff. Obviously, South Carolina offensively rolled. So I think everything else, Diesel, was pretty much par for the course. The best story of the weekend, there were 2 for me. Neither had to do with the SEC. Parker Bird at East Carolina, the kid with the prosthetic leg appearing in the game less than a year after a boating accident where he had his leg amputated. That was incredible. I mean, I don't care who you are. That's such an awesome story, and good on that dude, good on the family. That was really cool to see. And then Florida State, Mike Martin passed away a couple weeks ago. FSU wins their season opener 11-0. Mike Martin wore 11 at Florida State. It just felt like it was fitting. So it's just great to have college baseball back, guys. I mean, these first couple weeks, I don't know if there's going to be any, really big, bold,
right,
overreaction type of takes, but it's going to be fun to watch as these ball clubs sort of figure themselves out.
Chris, higher seed for the NCAA tournament, Clemson or South Carolina?
I'd still probably go South Carolina.
Wow. I'll tell you what, Joe Lenardi says 5 for Clemson, 7 for the Gamecocks.
Does he?
You're going higher for the game, but that's today. I'm saying ultimately, and you're saying Gamecocks.
Yeah, I'd probably go South Carolina. What's funny, guys? It's like we've got a bunch of different contributors right now contributing to SEC Unfiltered. They've all got different opinions, but people just haven't adjusted to that yet. So they think everything that comes out of SECU is coming from my mouth. So, we're talking, is it time to hit the panic button on South Carolina? People are freaking out. And I'm sitting over here like, I'm actually not panicking, believe it or not. I told Diesel this time a week ago, everybody in the SEC takes their lumps. South Carolina is going to take their lumps. I didn't think they were going to lose to LSU at home, but you just knew at some point, like, you're not going to close out the season on a 15-game winning streak, and you're going to lose a game at some point. So they need to bounce back this weekend at Ole Miss, right? You got a lot of time to rest up, recover, and get ready for that game. But, I think the Gamecocks are going to be fine. Even if they finish out the season 500, nobody gets through the SEC schedule alive. So it's going to toughen up, but I think the Gamecocks are going to be fine.
Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, answers all the tough questions that he does all the time. And you can check out the new content, SEC Unfiltered. Why cover one team when you can cover 16? There you go. Chris Phillips, continued success to you, my man. We'll talk to you next week, okay?
Mark Diesel, appreciate you guys. We'll talk soon.
All right. We've got the top 5 at 5 coming your way next, right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. What's good, my friends? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 o'clock p.m. today. You guys have a ton of choices out there. Truly do appreciate you making us part of your day each and every day. So, my friends, we've got a loaded hour for you in Mark and Diesel's Top 5, which airs every Tuesday here on Offsides. Today, 5 ways to improve, our top 5 ways to improve the upstate sports scene. My main man, David Villamahoj, sent me pictures of the Spartanburg construction for the new baseball stadium. That is certainly one of them. That is certainly one of the ways. How else? Our top 5 coming your way at 5:40 p.m. this afternoon. In the next segment, had a chance. Gosh, guys, was I ever ticked about the NBA All-Star disaster? What a waste of time. Like, if I could, this is not in the top 5 at 5 today, but give me until 5:06, please, on this. I watched what could be called the NBA All-Star game the other day, because I had a show to do yesterday. I was filling in for Righter Than You on CBS Sports Radio, 10 a.m. to noon. And I'm watching. So I'm like, okay, like, this is the only thing going on. I've got to watch this. I watched the Sabrina Ionescu against Steph Curry. That was awesome. Slam dunk contest sucked. Skills challenge was awful. The All-Star game was the worst thing I've ever seen. Then you had Adam Silver, who after the game was so disgusted by the product he just saw, by the product they just gave the great state of Indianapolis, that he goes after the game, he says, congratulations, I guess, to the Eastern Conference. You guys scored more points, I guess. Like he was about to explode. Final score of that game was 211 to 186. It was such a disaster. And let me tell you this.
Were they not playing MTV's Rockin' Jock, where they put the 3 baskets right on top of each other, and if you made it through all 3 of them, it's like 100 points?
You wouldn't have noticed the difference, Diesel. Diesel, I kid you not. They were shooting 3/4 court shots in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
For no reason. And I'm watching
Adam Silver, you're responsible for doing this.
Yeah, and he, like 2 minutes in, I'm like, oh my God, what a waste of time. This is a disaster. And I can tell you this, Diesel, when we went up to Michigan for my wife's father's funeral, we stopped in Indianapolis in August. We'd never been there. We're like, I heard this is a cool city. Let's stop for a few hours, just check it out. They had, you know how like when the SEC women's tournament is coming into Greenville, you see those banners all over town, SEC. They had that the All-Star game was going to be there in 6 months, all over downtown. Like it was a major point of pride. All-Star game, NBA All-Star game, 6 months later. How do you think they feel about that now? All-Star joke, All-Star sham. What a waste. What a joke. And so we had Rick Barry on, Hall of Famer, and I couldn't hold back. Well, what do you expect, Mark? It's an all-star game. I don't know. Try. Put something on the line that's other than money. Put home court advantage in the NBA Finals on the line. Mark Ryan, they did that in baseball with the World Series. You saw how that worked. How did it work? It made me watch every all-star game. That's how it worked. Okay? Like, I want to see effort. I want to see intensity. Used to be, you could roll the basketball out there and people try just because that's what you're supposed to do. And, like, I'm supposed to be trying to get you guys into the NBA. And you guys, every time we talk about the NBA, you tell me as clear as day, you don't want to talk about it. You don't like it. And you know what I said after watching that? I can't blame you. This is a total freaking joke. And now I know why I don't watch it, why I haven't watched a single one of those for the last 10 years. 211 to 186, 397 points scored. What a joke. All-star game, all-star shame. That's what it was. It's time for us to do that jam. We call it the Top 5 at 5. The top 5 biggest sports stories of the day, the top 5 topics we're discussing. Ladies and gentlemen of the Upstate, Offsiders, the Top 5 at 5 starts right now.
And now, the Top 5 at 5.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hit it.
5.
Caitlin Clark. Let us begin with her. Caitlin Clark, my friends, is single-handedly responsible for taking women's sports to the mainstream, for bringing women's sports to prime time. She has done that. No one before her, perhaps no one after. Because of Caitlin Clark, women's Final Four tickets last year were cost more than men's. That's the first time that's ever happened. Not only did they cost more, they cost 3 times more. Her final game of the national championship against LSU and Angel Reese drew nearly 10 million viewers, by far the largest audience ever to watch a women's basketball game any level. For the first time ever, Caitlin Clark has put women's sports on the marquee that is not an event for the Olympics or the World Cup. She is 98 points away from becoming the all-time points leader, all-time leading scorer for men's or women's basketball, 98 points shy of Pistol Pete Maravich. And when I tell you this, folks, it's not that she is the most famous women's basketball player, WNBA or college. It's that she is the most famous college athlete, men or women, period. The average, so what I did was I looked at the top 10 men's basketball players today, and I said, what's their presence on social media? Like, how popular are they? Okay? The average of the top 10 men's college basketball players on Twitter, their following is 15,600. So if you take all the top 10, you average them, they average 15,600 followers. Now, to put that in perspective, I have 9,000 followers. I think Diesel has 7,000 or 8,000 followers. These are the top 10 best players in college basketball. Caitlin Clark has 183,000 followers. Mark, certainly college football has her beat. Try again. Marvin Harrison Jr., 93,000 followers. Caitlin Clark, 183. Okay? She's got lines stretched for miles. She hasn't played to a non-sellout crowd on the road in over a year. So our question to you is the place for women's sports in mainstream primetime television now solidified? Or is this a blip, not a trend? Sadly, I think it's a blip because I think it is Caitlin Clark dependent. And I think, unfortunately, when she goes to the WNBA, I don't trust their ability to capitalize on it. I think when Caitlin Clark goes to the NBA, she's not going to be as big of a deal. And I think you're going to see her stay at Iowa next year for one more year as a result. Next up.
4.
The powers that be in college football have come to a resolution, my friends. They have decided that the format for the college football playoff is going to be, drum roll please, the top 5 ranked Power 5 conference champions are all going to get bids, and then there will be 7 at-larges. This ensures that a little guy is going to be included. But why not just keep it the same way that it was? Why not just keep it the six highest ranked conference champions and 6 at-larges? That would give a spot for 2 little guys. A Boise State, maybe an Appalachian State, maybe a Coastal Carolina, okay? Maybe an Akron. But why not give 2 spots for those teams? Why take one away? You know, isn't that what the beauty of March Madness is, a shot for the little guy? You know, as it is, 5 and 7 feels like a token birth to me, a sacrificial lamb to me. At least they're included, and that is good. At least we're never going to see a Florida State screw job again. That is good. But I see no reason to make the change, whether there's a Pac-12 champion or conference or not. Next up.
3.
My friends, South Carolina is in a bit of a dip in terms of their college basketball. They had the total no-show at Auburn, 40 points drubbing last week, 101-61. And then at home, a shocking 1-point loss to sub-500 LSU. Guys, look, what did you expect? This is a team predicted to finish last. Lamont Paris still should be your national coach of the year. This is still a top 25 team that we're talking about here, okay? Let's keep things in proper perspective. Let's not have the wheels fall off. Clemson, on the other hand, continuing their solid play. They're in action tomorrow night against Georgia Tech. So my question to you guys is this. When the bracket comes out for March Madness, who, pray tell, is going to be a higher seed? Is it going to be Clemson or is it going to be South Carolina? Diesel, what do you say? Higher seed, Clemson or South? But today, Joe Lenardi has Clemson a 5, South Carolina 7.
I think it's going to be South Carolina. I still believe that this Clemson basketball team will drop a game or 2 that they shouldn't drop down the stretch. They lost one last week that they shouldn't have lost, right? Let me pull up their basketball schedule here. Clemson lost a game. They lost to NC State on Saturday, 78-77. You should be better than NC State. I mean, you go back, you have to go all the way back then to they took a 1-point loss to Virginia at home. Quality opponent, not saying that they're not. But Clemson has a tendency to lose games that they shouldn't lose. And this South Carolina team gets hot and can go on another streak right here where it really matters. So I'm going to say that the Gamecocks get the higher seed.
I'm going Clemson gets the higher seed. I think, South Carolina is not going to go in a tailspin. The wheels aren't going to fall off, but I could see a few more losses coming their way. I could see South Carolina ending up between a 6 and an 8. I'll go Clemson. Can you guys break the tie? Who gets a higher seed when all is said and done, Clemson or South Carolina? Next up.
2.
At number 2, Matt Rule, Nebraska head coach, is saying the quiet part out loud. He is open and honest in admitting at Nebraska, it's about putting wins together. It's about becoming bowl eligible. Imagine Nebraska saying it's about becoming bowl eligible. Hey, my alma mater, Florida, isn't in a much better spot right now, right? It's about becoming bowl eligible. So what do you do? Like he's saying, we're not going to schedule primetime Power 5 opponents out of conference anymore. It's just not going to happen. And you know what? That's the smart play. And he's right. And you cannot like it. I don't like Florida's schedule. I don't like that my alma mater has the hardest schedule that Josh Pate has ever seen in his life. I don't like that 9 out of 12 opponents are in the top 25. I don't like that everyone's calling my head coach dead man walking before the season begins. I don't like it. So you know what? I agree with Sir Matt Rule. He's right. You shouldn't schedule anybody in the out-of-conference anymore. You guys made this bed with the expanded playoff. Now you reap what you sow. Sleep in that bed. And finally,
1.
At number 1, good news coming for the Dins. You know the saying, right? For Furman, they are going to upgrade Timmons Arena by the tune of $40 million. A $40 million upgrade to Timmons Arena. Why is this massive? Well, it improves college basketball in the state, right? I believe the last 10 years, Furman has had the best basketball program in the Palmetto State. But it also, when your rival has Jerry Richardson Indoor Stadium and you have Timmons Arena, that's a tough sell, man. You walk into Timmons Arena and look, the Furman people are great. Okay, they're awesome. We love them to death. They've been nothing but kind to us. But you walk in Timmons Arena and it feels like a multi-purpose venue. It doesn't feel like a basketball standalone. What other sports venues remind you of that? Remember when Wallace Wade Stadium had the track around it in football? Remember when you're like, this looks like this, like they couldn't even give football a standalone field. They have to use this for multiple things, right?
In the ACC.
In the ACC, in a major conference. So Timmons is undergoing a facelift. When we've had Bob Ritchie on the show, he said that's the number one thing we need for Timmons to be upgraded, to be a big-time, prime-time basketball venue, basketball arena. It isn't like that now. They're making the changes to make it that way. We give you, Furman, a round of applause for doing the right thing. You're helping not only your school, but also the sports scene in the state. Cannot wait to check out a game in the new arena.
They're going to be adding about 750 seats. It looks like they're going to be creating a concourse that goes all the way around the seating, which they don't currently have. It looks like they're going to be, it does say in the article that they are going to be revamping the entranceway into the arena. So it'll be fascinating to see how that goes. And if they are able to hang a video board from the ceiling, if they're able to place multiple video boards around the arena, like Wofford has them in the corners instead of having one big one hanging from the middle like most schools have. Doing something like that, I think, would make a tremendous difference to Furman, and like it would look fantastic to have this big video board hanging down over this. We're gonna be treated to see what $40 million buys you in 2024 and 2025. Like I can't even fathom what $40 million does. Right? It seems like a lot of money, but then you say, well, with these major renovation projects, is $40 million really that much?
New stadiums now all cost $1 billion.
Right. Exactly.
So like $40 million, you'd think it'd make a big difference. Guys, I applaud this. This is awesome. Timmons Arena has been serviceable. It's been okay. It's time to make your cathedral. It's time to honor your head coach and keep your great head coach with a cathedral. And it's awesome to see Furman is doing just that. And those are today's top 5 at 5. Now it's your chance to chime in, which you can do at 844-FAN-PHONE on the Renewal by Anderson fan phone. That's 844-FANFONE. That's 844-326-3663. The text line is there for you at 71307. Just start your text with the word fan and away you go. You can get to us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube at the Fan Upstate on every one. Please, on each one, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to us on YouTube. And finally, email. You guys can all email the show. Mark Ryan, that is MARC Ryan at thefanupstate.com. All the different ways you can get in touch with us here on the most interactive sports radio show anywhere. Coming up next, we talk to NBA Hall of Famer Rick Barry. You're going to hear me ask him if he could watch any player from a previous era play in this era, who would it be? That's next here on Offsides. We are the Fan Upstate.